it has been a mixed bag of a Saturday here in the Geek House, and it started way too early, as in midnight to 1:45 in the morning, when I was abruptly jolted awake by a nuisance-tripping, malfunctioning smoke detector. Looking over the unit, it looks like the thing needs to be replaced based on some issues that it has. So I'm going to be calling the landlord's maintenance guy about it. Oh joy, another year where I call him in, hey, come down to fix something right before Christmas. Well, he's done it before, and last time it was with a sewer pipe, so let's see if he can do it again. Oh joy. Well, let's try and move on from this. Whatever. Anyways, let's get away from the depressing part of today and try and find a way to have some fun here, lest I be accused of being a ripoff of the melancholy world of Multimedia Rand. So here's my teenage keyboard, as I've referred to it in years gone by, on its way to being 20 years old in, I got it in Christmas of 1998, and I actually still have a picture from when I first got this thing for Christmas, and it still works all these years later. It just has sounds that are right out of 1998 as well. I've been spraying some duster can stuff under the buttons to get anything out that might have built up from this thing collecting dust. But turn down some of that reverb as well. It sounds like the rock organ out of Mario Kart 64, but then again, this thing is contemporary to Mario Kart 64, at least that era of gaming and things like that. So, yeah, my teenage keyboard, it's a Casio WK1250, and if folks are interested, I can talk about the various keyboards I've had over the years, but basically my interest in goofing around with keyboards is a spin-off of my interest in technology and computers, because you're pushing buttons to make music on this thing, just like you'd push buttons to do things on a computer keyboard. Well, yeah. MIDI has always fascinated me too, especially big sound fonts and stuff like that. And there was a time when I was in college when I was on campus working for the summer, and there was this guy who had a drum set in the radio station, which wasn't operating during the summertime. So I used to hear him walking home from work. He'd be over there banging away on the drums, and I'd hook this thing up to a really nice sound font on my Sound Blaster Odyssey at the time, and I'd have drums that sounded almost as realistic, except I'd be doing something like that, and things along those lines. Well, it appears that the landscape for recording music with fancy MIDI equipment has changed in recent years. So I've picked up a Roland UM1 USB MIDI interface, and this thing's fantastic for sending MIDI files out of the computer to an external device. But it doesn't make much sense to do so, because I have virtual MIDI synth and my sound fonts from my Sound Blaster Odyssey days that I can use to play MIDIs and have them sound really, really nice. I mean, very, very close to live instruments. Definitely not like, Radio Shack 80s special keyboard or anything like that. People like, definitely way, way, way above the Microsoft GS Wavetable synth, that's for sure. But the landscape has changed. Starting with, I think it's like Windows 7 or something, or Vista or something like that. The drivers for Creative's drivers for MIDI support really got horrible. And then the enthusiast sound cards shifted away from multi-use over to gaming, and the sound font support really fell apart. I mean, my last Creative card, the sound fonts would make horrible clicking noises and stuff like that. I could try a Sound Blaster Z, and I'm very tempted to do that in Monolith for reasons unrelated to MIDI. I'm having some problems with hiss and configuration when I fire up the home theater system on this thing versus the two stereo Logitech speakers and things like that. But it hasn't been good. I'm reading up nowadays that apparently making really nice MIDI music is something you do, on your instruments and your mixer, and if you want to make a computer file with sound fonts or something, you can always play it and stuff like that, and record it and transfer it that way to get better instrument sounds. I know I certainly need better instrument sounds with this thing, and being straight out of 1998, let me tell you. Oh man, listen to some of those sounds. The good news about this, though, is that the screen hasn't dimmed in any way, shape, or form. Oh, listen to those samples. Oh, brother. Especially the drums. It's totally straight out of the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 eras. Now, I have seen some demos of the newer Casio keyboards and the Yamahas and some of the other stuff that's out there as well. And arranger keyboards like this, I could just get this thing's descendant that's actually modern and get far better sounds right off the bat. The problem is, though, I want to upgrade the sound. If I want to record music, I want the better sounds from my sound fonts instead of what's in this thing. So that's why I picked up this little Roland dongle. I tried the generic ones that you find on eBay or Amazon Marketplace that cost a lot less than this thing does, and you get a lot less too. There's a comparison video that I will be linking in the description. But by and large, yes, you get what you pay for with MIDI adapters. This thing works amazing. I can send a MIDI to the keyboard if I really want to hear what certain songs would sound like on this thing's instrument set. And I could theoretically do the reverse, too. Hear my sound fonts in real time as I play on this thing and get better sounds that way and just mute the locals on this thing. Except for one major problem. With the soft synths and everything that I use nowadays, using this Roland box, the Roland box is not the problem. It's everything the computer does to generate MIDI on the fly. It introduces latency, sometimes up to like 100 milliseconds and stuff. There's a latency setting in the virtual MIDI synth that I'm using to continue using sound fonts, even though I no longer have a creative card and might get a Sound Blaster Z, but maybe not. There is a latency setting, but if you turn down the latency, you get better response, but you also get music glitches as well, and things like that. So the glory days of the two DINs going out of the keyboard straight into the computer, and everything being real time without clicks or glitches or not artifacting, but just mess ups in general, because MIDI is not analog by nature. It's basically playing pre-recorded sound samples, and it's musical notes and stuff. That's why MIDIs are always so incredibly tiny versus real recordings and whatnot, and stuff along those lines. So yeah, I've come a long way, but this has created a whole new dilemma, because what I could do, if I want to use the sound fonts, is record using the local set of instruments and put up with the horrible sounding Nintendo 64 era instruments. Or I could get another keyboard, a newer, maybe a descendant of this Casio. But the problem is, this thing still plays. It doesn't have broken keys, which is good, because the Concert Made 1100 that I had before this had a major problem with keys breaking under normal use. It was like the Windows 98 of musical keyboards. Even if you used it the normal way and didn't abuse it, it would seem to break all by itself. I would have a key snap on me. This thing, and I've been kind of rough on this over the years, but even as a crappy chunk of plastic Casio, cheap chunk of plastic anyways, all the keys are still original from the late 1990s. I could disassemble this thing and clean off all the contacts that everything presses up against, but that's the extent of it. Everything, even when I've played... Shut up. Even when, let's go to number 160, which is when the drum kits start. Even when I've played drums with this thing, I still haven't had any keys break. Nearly 20 years, no broken keys. Which is more than I can say for the 1100, which broke keys twice in a single year. Lack of build quality, let me tell you. When this thing has better build quality than the Radio Shack stuff, that's your cue to get away from the Radio Shack stuff. Which I did. Even though Casio, I mean, come on. I remember the Casio-tone keyboards from the 80s, and oh look, this little piano thing has 16 sounds in it! That's awesome! So I'm kind of faced with a dilemma with this. Quite a dilemma, actually, because I could get a newer keyboard and have better sounds. I could even have like a miniature organ set up, so to speak, with two keyboards stacked and play both at once, and this thing can MIDI down to the other one, so I get the better sounds on both sets of keys. But, I'm thinking I should grin and bear it, you know, use the built-in recorder to record without latency when I want to record a song of some sort, or do it in bits and pieces at a time or something like that. And if I have to, because there's a limit on the number of notes that it can save. But, or, you know, just get an SD card keyboard or something like that. But I'm just trying to figure out, you know, I want to do some music recording, and I want to do some kind of more audio-related work for the whole multimedia part of what it is I do on here. This is allegedly a multimedia-focused channel, and yet I do too much regular computer stuff. I want to do some more stuff with audio-visual type stuff. Some of that may involve recording music. And how to proceed, especially when I just picked up this Roland box. And now, yeah, I think what I'm going to end up doing ultimately, whether I get a new keyboard or not this year, this Roland box will be used for transfers to sound fonts. So yeah, I'll use the built-in sounds on whatever I'm recording with to sequence everything up, and then put it on play and transfer it to the computer to sound font it as a MIDI file in something like Anvil Studio afterwards. Basically, go analog with it, add vocals, add whatever else I want to add to it, and just grin and bear it with the late 1990s sounds. If any of you folks mess around with, you know, MIDI hookups and fancy stuff like that, fancy MIDI hookups and things along those lines, feel free to talk about it in the comments, but I'm legitimately curious about how to proceed here. So, either way, this WK-1250 has been back and forth to college. I've used it in church services. I've used it at home. This has traveled a lot in its little jetpack thingy. That's what it's called anyways. It was a thick padded case for this thing, but yeah, this thing has been all over the place. It's 78 key, and interestingly enough, the keys actually start with a C and end with, you know, so it is kind of, it's not like those ones that abruptly end in the middle of an octave. Curious why the newer keyboards do that. Unfortunately, the keys are not like piano keys, they're more like organ keys, so it is kind of like organ-ish type stuff. And in its old age, some of the touch sensitivity is not what it used to be, so I'm very tempted to disassemble this thing and put some alcohol to all the contacts and clean them up, because this thing has seen very little use and it's collected too much dust in too many places. Fortunately, it seems like I've gotten the buttons working again, just with some canned air, but I don't think this is any way to... nope, I'm hitting plus and it's moving only half the time. Yeah, we can't have that. So, how to proceed with the teenage keyboard is an open discussion in the comments. Let's get some input on this matter, but I would like to get into some music for 2017, for reasons which we can talk about some other time. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.